Hello, my name is Chengbin Li, a high school candidate at Beijing Haidian Kaiwen Academy. Today, I'll present my research, looking beyond economic matrix, how the development in socialist economies challenge the mainstream indicator. Through analysis of China and Cuba, I will demonstrate why gross domestic product fails to capture the true development and propose a more accurate measurement framework. GDP exclusively quantifies monetized market transactions, yet socialist economies prioritize collective welfare over profit maximization. When states fund essential services like healthcare or education, GDP categorizes them merely as government spending rather than welfare contributions. This creates systematic bias against non-market economic systems. For example, Cuba's GDP per capita stands at just $9,500, which is superficially low. However, its social achievements reveal a different reality. A 99.8% literacy rate, ranking among the world's highest, 8.2 physicians per 1,000 citizens, surpassing developed nations, and a life expectancy of 79.1 years, matching affluent countries. This disparity occurs because GDP treats Cuba's free healthcare and education as budget expenditures rather than value-generating social investments. And for China, which is another example of a socialist economy, while China's GDP growth is remarkable, it still overlooks approximately $1.2 trillion annually in public service value. Consider that a standard medical consultation costs only $4 in China versus $300 in the US. Meanwhile, China's 45,000-kilometer high-speed rail network reduces intercity travel time by 60%, significantly boosting productivity. GDP mischaracterizes these developments as expenses rather than strategic investments and obscures regional inequalities, like Shanghai's National Happiness Index score of 75 versus Gansu's 55. The foundational limitation is GDP's market-centric valuation. In Cuba, life-saving healthcare is reduced to fiscal expenditure in national accounts. In China, state assets like railway enable economic expansion, but remain excluded from GDP calculations. Socialism's emphasis on collective welfare thus becomes statistically invisible within conventional matrix. To address this gap, I propose integrating GDP with comprehensive national power index. This hybrid matrix incorporates social welfare accessibility, such as healthcare coverage and education equality, alongside collective assets like infrastructure and public goods valuation. Applied to China, the CNP reviews actual development exceeds GDP measurements by 20 to 25%, finally aligning assessment tools with socialist priorities. Transitioning beyond GDP is critical for three reasons. First, GDP incentives short-term growth, while CNP values long-term welfare sustainability. Second, it reflects socialism's foundational principle of equity over profit maximization. Third, it advances global frameworks to like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We must develop metrics that measure human progress, not merely market activity. So, in summary, GDP systematically underestimates socialist economies by excluding non-market welfare systems and collective assets. The CNP index provides a holistic alternative that captures Cuba's social achievements and China's developmental scale. Ultimately, economics requires measurement tools that recognize diverse paths to human well-being. Thanks for listening, and this research demonstrates the urgency of redefining development matrix for socialist systems. I welcome your questions, and you can find my email address at the first page of my slide. Goodbye.